Fundamentals of Chinese 4, Unit 2, Dating. Turning down an invitation, understand it. Turn to pages 181 to 183 in your textbook. Have a pen or pencil ready to take notes. So as you saw in the video, Leo gets a phone call. And it starts out with the individual who made the phone call saying, 喂，请问李友小姐在吗? Right? So this sentence should not pose a problem for you. 喂，请问李友小姐在吗? So pause and write down what you think this means. And you should have come up with something close to, hello, excuse me, is Miss Lee there? So Leo responds and says, 我就是，请问你是哪一位？我就是，请问你是哪一位? This should not pose a problem for you either. Pause and think about this one and write down what you think it means. And you should have something relatively close to, this is she, or this is Leo, or it's me. Excuse me, who are you? Now, who are you? You've learned 你是谁?你是谁? And that's a more direct translation of what I have here. 你是谁? But Chinese can also express this in this way. Literally, this is, excuse me, please, you are which person? And 位 is a measure word for person. 一位人, right? It's a measure word for 人, for example, for a person. And often you'll know in Chinese is that they can use the measure word but drop the noun that is associated with the measure word. So they can simply say 哪一位. So literally this is please, you are which individual or which person. And this is a common way of expressing, basically asking, who are you? This guy responds by saying, 我姓费. 你还记得我吗? 我姓费, 你还记得我吗? So we have this 记得. 记得. 记得 means remember. So 你还记得我吗? So this shouldn't be a problem for you. Pause and write down what you think it means. My last name is Fei. 我姓费. 我姓费. And do you still remember me? 你还记得我吗? You still remember me? And then ma because it's a question. 我姓费. 你还记得我吗? And then Leo says 姓费. And it's a question, so we want to make it sound like a question. 姓费. So this is pretty simple. I'm sure you know what it means. Write down what you think it means. So it's a question. Your last name is Fei? Your last name is Fei? Xing Fei? And he responds, Mr. Fei responds, 你还记得? So we just saw 记得 means remember. 你还记得上个月高小英的生日舞会吗? 我就是最后请你跳舞的那个人。你再想想，想起来了吗? Alright, a little quicker. 你还记得上个月高小英的生日舞会吗? 我就是最后请你跳舞的那个人。你再想想，想起来了吗？ Okay. So you know, 想 means to think, or generally it means to think, but it can also mean remember. And um, this, well, it means think. And then together with 起来, because 记得 you just saw is remember right here. But 起来 means to like rise up or rise out. 起来. And 想起来 means to think something out. Literally, think something out. Pull out a thought, which is basically to recall something, is the most accurate translation. Very similar to remembering something. So, 你想想，想起来了吗？ So, 你还记得上个月高小燕的生日舞会吗？我就是最后请你跳舞的那个人。你再想想，想起来了吗？ Okay, so pause and write down what you think this sentence means. Okay, so 你还记得上个月高小燕的生日舞会吗？ So do you still remember Gao Xiaoyan's birthday dance party last month? Or birthday party, but, you know, 舞会 is like a party. Dance party or just party. 我就是最后请你跳舞的那个人. I was the last person to ask you to dance. Right? 你再想一想，你再想一想。再 again. So try and remember again, or try and remember. And then, do you remember? Do you recall? 你想起来了吗? And so you just saw 想起来 to be to recall or to remember. So what do you think this means? Leo says 对不起，我想不起来. Okay, so imagine this 不 is not here. We just saw on the previous slide, we saw 你想起来吗？想起来. And now we have a 不 in between 想 and 起来, which gives us 想不起来. So Leo says 对不起，我想不起来. So I'm sure you can guess what that means. Pause and write down what you think this means. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Okay, so this kind of grammar, this kind of way of expressing things is often difficult for learners of Chinese, because in English we put the word don't before the verb, and you've learned 不, or for past tense you've learned 没有. But in this case you can't really say, or it's not common to say 我没有记得, or 我没有想, or 我不想, or 我不记得. Well, you might be able to say 我不记得. That might work. But here's a very common way of saying I'm sorry, I don't recall. 我想不起来. So 想起来 is to think something out of your head, for example, to think something out. And then 想不起来 is thinking, but it's not coming out. 想不起来, or rising up. 起来 is to rise up out of your head, for example. So you think, but it won't come up out of your head. 想不起来. All right. So Mr. Fei responds by saying, 我是高小英的中学同学. 我是高小英的中学同学. All right, this shouldn't pose much of a problem for you. Please pause and write down what you think it means. And very likely you came up with something quite close to, I'm Gao Xiaoyin's high school classmate. All right, next Leo responds and says, 是吗？你是怎么知道我的电话号码的? Now, you remember you learned a few lessons back these kind of 是 and then blah 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 the sentences. And this construction 是 and then the and then whatever's in between it is one way of expressing how you did some action. So it's kind of like the past tense. Okay? So 号码 is number. And 号码 is most frequently used together with 电话 to come up with 电话号码, which is 电话, you know, is telephone. So 电话号码 is telephone number. So 是吗？你是怎么知道我的电话号码的? Okay, pause and write down what you think this means. And likely you came up with something close to, really, how do you know my telephone number? You, you know, 是, which introduces a 是 the construction. So you, how, know my telephone number. 你是怎么知道我的电话号码的? And he responds using the same 是 the construction by saying 是小英告诉我的. 是小英告诉我的. So pause and write down what you think this means. 小英 told me. 告诉 means to tell, as you'll recall. 告诉我 tell me. 小英告诉我. 小英 told me. And then this 是 and the is used to make it something that has occurred. 费先生，你有事吗? Alright, so Leo wants to move this conversation forward, and she says, 费先生，你有事吗? Alright, what does this mean? Pause and write it down. Mr. Fei, what's up? So you remember 你有事吗? You have a matter with me, or do you have some issue or something you want to talk about? What's up? 你有事吗? And Mr. Fei says, 这个周末你有空吗? 我想请你去跳舞. And you'll see in the video they use this Beijing R, 空. 这个周末你有空吗? 我想请你去跳舞. Okay? This shouldn't pose a problem for you. Please pause and write down what you think it means. And you very likely came up with something close to, are you free this weekend? 这个周末, remember all time, all clauses of time come up front. So 这个周末, this weekend, 你有空吗? Do you have some free time this weekend? 我想请你去跳舞. I would like to take you out dancing. Alright, so Leo responds by saying, 这个周末不行. 下个星期我有3个考试. Alright, so pause and write down what you think this means. 这个周末不行. 下个星期我有3个考试. Pause and write down what you think this means. So it looks like Leo is not so interested in going out with this guy. So this weekend is not okay. 这个周末不行. I have 3 exams next week. 下个星期我有3个考试. Okay. So Mr. Fei then says, 没关系. He seems very optimistic here. 没关系. 下个周末怎么样? 你考完试，我们好好 So here's this R sound with the 好. So 好好 玩一玩 or 好好玩玩。OK，没关系，下个周末怎么样？你考完试，我们好好玩玩。Alright, so we just saw 这个周末 on the previous side. 这个周末 on the previous slide, which is this weekend. So if 这个周末 is this weekend, then 下个周末 is what? Pause and write down what you think this sentence means. So 没关系, no problem. 下个周末怎么样? How about next weekend? 你考完试, you'll be done with your exams. 我们好好玩玩, and we can have a great time. Again, you may have not had a translation that's exactly like this, but as long as the meaning was correct, then we're good to go. Alright, so Leo responds, 下个周末也不行，我要从宿舍搬出去. And we'll see this in grammar point number 4, this 出去. 得打扫整理房间。下个周末也不行，我要从宿舍搬出去，得打扫整理房间。Okay, so this 搬 here means to move, as in to not move something like, move over, or yeah, you might be able to say that, but in this case, it's because we have this word here, it means to move out, as in moving house, moving from one house to another, or one apartment to another, or what have you. So pause and write down. Well, no, we've got more here. So we have 搬, so 下个周末也不行，我要从宿舍搬出去。Okay, let's see what this 得打扫整理房间. Let's see what this is all about. So 打扫means to clean up a room or a house. That means wiping everything down, sweeping, mopping, making everything clean. 打扫. So we have 下个周末也不行，我要从宿舍搬出去，得打扫. And then we have 整理房间. So 整理 needs to put in order. So it's a dormitory. So make sure the bed is against the wall, the desk is against the wall and neat, the chairs, everything looks neat and clean. Everything's not in chaos. Okay, 下个周末也不行，我要从宿舍搬出去，得打扫整理房间. So I'm pretty sure you've seen this 房间 before, but it was in the vocabulary list. 房间 means room. So you now have everything you need to decipher this sentence. 下个周末也不行，我要从宿舍搬出去，得打扫整理房间. Pause and write down what you think this means. And you likely came up with something close to 下个周末也不行. Next weekend is also not good. 我要从宿舍搬出去. I'm moving out. 搬出去. So 出去 means to go out of. And when you have a verb before it, it's move out in this case. Okay, I'm moving out of the dormitory. Dormitory is here. 得打扫, and I have to clean. 整理 and straighten out. Right, 房间 the room or the dormitory. All right, very good. So we have Mr. Persistent here. So 这个周末不行。下个周末也不行. So this Mr. Fei is being quite persistent, so he asks, 你看下个周末好不好? And the Chinese do indeed use this construction here. This is not to be funny. 你看下个周末好不好? So 这个周末, 下个周末 you just learned. So what about 下个周末? Pause and write down what you think this means. And you should have very likely come up with something close to what about next weekend. Is that good? 好不好? All right. So Leo comes back and says, 对不起，下个周末更不行啦。我要跟我的男朋友 Alright, so now she's getting a little more direct. 男朋友去纽约旅行 Okay, now Chinese, there's a little bit of Chinese culture in here because Chinese are not very direct people. They don't like to say no. And if the answer to some kind of request is no, then they try to come up with excuses like Leo has done consistently here. And if the other person really, in this case, someone's asking someone else out, and if the other person really wants to go out with you, like for example, if Leo really wanted to go out with you, then if in this weekend wasn't good, she would probably say, well, this weekend isn't so good, but what about next week? Or what about next weekend? She might invite that. So you're supposed to sense, okay, she's interested. But if she turns him down twice already, this guy, according to Chinese culture, Mr. Fei here, he needs to get the point and understand that Leo's not interested. But he doesn't get the point. So Leo comes out with the big guns here. 旅行means to travel. So she responds to his 下个星期怎么样 and says 对不起，下个周末更不行啦，我要跟我的男朋友去纽约旅行。So pause and write down what you think this means. So likely you came up with something close to this. 对不起, sorry. 下个周末更不行啦. Okay, sorry. Next week is also not good, but we have 更 in here, so next. Yeah, I have next weekend. Let's just say is. So it's probably more accurate to say, sorry, next weekend is even worse. It's also probably important to point out that the more appropriate English here might be the weekend after next. But next weekend works just fine. Or we might say the following weekend. But this is fine here. Next weekend is even worse. 我要跟我的男朋友 I will with my boyfriend 去纽约旅行. I'm traveling to New York with my boyfriend. So she was very clear. In fact, first in Chinese culture, she turned him down by not directly saying, well, she said no. She said bushing, but she was coming up with excuses and whatnot. And he wasn't getting it, that she wasn't interested. And apparently he's still not getting it because he says, nah. Now, what is he probably getting ready to do if he says, nah? All right. So what does he mean here? Then. So it sounds like what he's about to do is, what about next weekend? So Leo has had it, and she comes up with this. 费先生，对不起，我的手机没电了，再见. Okay, so the only thing that you haven't seen before in this sentence is 电. Now, actually, you've seen 电 before because you've learned 电话, and you've also learned 电脑. So you remember 电话is telephone, 电脑is computer. You've also learned 电影, which is movie. All of these words, phone, computer, movie, they have this 电 in it. So you've seen 电 before, but you haven't seen it on its own. But you know, because I've told you before, that 电 means electricity. So 我的手机没电了. So I'm sure you can figure that out. 费先生，对不起，我的手机没电了，再见. So pause and write down what you think this means. And if you came up with something close to Mr. Fei, sorry, my cell phone is out of power. Bye. Then you did well. And then poor Mr. Fei. 喂, 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 喂. So what's Mr. Fei doing here? Hello, hello. You know, anybody there? You still there? Can you hear me? And that concludes this Understand It lesson for Unit 2.